we're not the only people going live tonight. All right, everybody's going live. The funny thing about us going live is because this is only our second time doing this, there's an element to it of like,
and we are live.
Yeah, but we don't really like have a professional start. We just are just talking, and we realize, oh, we're live.
Here we are.
Yeah. And I would love for us to be able to perfect that over time, which is why we're okay. I'm going to send this to our texters real quick. Here's the link for the live. Also, wish you had the most first rounders this year. I'm not. Show. All right. I can't wait till we perfect this. It's not bad. It's just, you can tell we just haven't done this a lot. And so, okay. In 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Steven Means and Stefan Krajisnik. We're just going to act like we haven't been live here already for about 3 minutes there and just act like we're starting from scratch. Ohio State, first night of the NFL draft is complete. Ohio State with 4 guys drafted. Emeka Egbuka, 19th to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Donovan Jackson, 24th to the Minnesota Vikings. Tyleik Williams, 28th to the Detroit Lions, which I think is pretty funny because it feels like Michigan and Ohio State just traded a player states to the prospective NFL teams. And then Josh Simmons closes out the first round going 32nd to the Kansas City Chiefs. That is officially the most NFL draft picks to go in the first round of the Ryan Day era. It surpasses a 2020 draft class that had Chase Young, Jeff Okudah, and Damon Arnett all go in the first round. And then in 2023, CJ Stroud, Paris Johnson, and Jackson Smith-Njigba all went in the first round. It's actually the second most. It's the most actually since 2016 when they had 5 guys, Joey Bosa, Ezekiel Elliott, Eli Apple, Taylor Decker, and Darren Lee all go in the first round. Get the text, 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99. After that, I was just sending texts left and right all night. They weren't all the most newsy texts. Sometimes it was just little tidbits about where things were going on here. But Stefan, I don't know if we have to go in order unless you want to go in order here, but 4 guys to choose from. That's the most of any team this year. We were talking before. We were talking while we were already on this pod, but we weren't officially potting yet because we're live, but we're still trying to figure it out. Texas, you said, had 3. Michigan had 3. Alabama had 2. Ole Miss had 2. A couple other schools had 2. Georgia had 2, I believe. Where would you like to start amongst these 4 in terms of importance to the Ryan Day era, Ohio State, or just important to you? We can do whatever we want.
Am I allowed to be? Am I allowed to be kind of evil and start with the rivalry? Can we? I mean, it's Ohio State, Michigan. Where else would we begin? Yeah. I think maybe the most interesting thing for me to track throughout this draft as a whole, and it's going to spill over to next year's draft as well, and then obviously taken from last year's draft, is how many draft picks are there going to be from the Michigan National Championship team, and how many are there going to be from this Ohio State team? I think there's going to be more from this Ohio State team. Mm-hmm. And today we could kind of find out how many first-round picks there was going to be from either team. So if I'm doing this right, J.J. McCarthy was the only Michigan first-round pick last year. They have Mason Graham, Colson Loveland, Kenneth Grant this year. So they're up to 4. And Ohio State's already at 4 now with Josh Simmons getting drafted. And we're assuming Caleb Downs will be there next year. Potential Carnell Tate first round next year. Jeremiah Smith, potential first round next year. On the Michigan side, they will have some spillover technically into next year. I hope I'm pronouncing these names right. Keon, is it Saab or Sab? He's with Bama now, but he was on that 20. He was on the Michigan National Championship team.
I think he was
23. Yeah. And then Jair Hill was on that team as well. And I saw him in some projections going, obviously very early projections for 2026 going first round. So I think Ohio State's going to end up having the edge in first round picks from the 2 championship teams, but it's actually going to end up being kind of close because Michigan with 3 guys this year, shorten the gap a bit because, they were coming in with just J.J. McCarthy last year. They were going to have some work to do. So it's going to be interesting comparing these numbers between the 24, 25, and 26, I guess, and 27 drafts because of Jeremiah Smith doing what he did. It's going to be cool comparing these rosters overall and seeing the NFL draft numbers.
It's also
because it is like, I don't want to say it's a shame because they did it to themselves, but the cheating thing did kind of gloss over that this was a very talented team, and if they hadn't cheated, no one would be talking about them the way people talk about them.
Which is why it's going to infuriate fans even more when that does start to play out. When you look back on all these things, you knew it in real time. Oh, these Ohio State teams from a recruiting aspect were more talented than these Michigan teams were. Recruiting rankings across the country, right? Blue chip ratios, the talent composite 247 puts out, whatever you want to use as a metric, they were all saying Ohio State's more talented than Michigan. And so every fan was already going, how do we keep losing these games? And it's like, oh, okay, they were cheating. But then they lost in 2024 and nobody was cheating. And it's like, how are you doing this? Well, two things happened. Mason Graham went 5th to the Browns, and I think Kenneth Grant went 13th, I believe, to the Miami Dolphins. Well, that's how they lost in 2024. Ryan Day and Chip Kelly decided, hey, let's run at those two guys all game long. Instead of giving the ball to our 19th pick and our eventual top 5 draft pick. We don't have to stay negative, but it's just another reminder of the only negative that comes out of Thursday night is more infuriation about how those Michigan games went, because every single metric, even the NFL drafts now, is telling you that Ohio State has been better and more talented than Michigan. So what the heck was happening the last Saturday in November?
Yeah.
I'm glad you did that so you could be the villain.
But I want to say very clearly now, it's out of the way. We're done talking about that. I'm sorry that we started like that, but it was just on my mind because I was just doing that research. But let's actually start with Ohio State. Let's talk Emeka, because the run of receivers is just, it's amazing. And it's unprecedented. I did some pretty quick research after Emeka went 19th to the Bucks.
Yeah.
To just see, has there ever been a team that's had 4 straight drafts with a receiver in the first round? And it's a hard thing to look up because I don't have the advanced analytics.
More tedious than the 20 minutes you probably spent trying to find it.
Yes, correct. And what I did was, I'm just going to look up wide receivers taken in the first round of NFL history. That was easy to find. And then I Control F searched Alabama, USC, LSU, Texas, and I was like, Florida, if one of these schools didn't get it, I'm sure nobody did. Notre Dame, whatever. And the only team I could find that came close was the Alabama stretch from 2020 to 22. I have it here in front of me. Let me just pull it up. Where they had Judy, Ruggs, Smith, Waddle, and Jameson Williams, which is, it's funny that Jameson Williams is in that mix. But so they had 5 receivers in a 3 draft span.
Okay.
This is Ohio State going 4 straight drafts with the first round pick. I don't think that's ever happened before.
It's the same amount.
Yes.
That's the key thing. It's 5 guys, which is spread out a little more because it wasn't 2 and 2 and then 1.
Right.
I think the impressive thing, and I wrote about this. So back in 2023, the summer 2023, Marv is on the internet looking up stuff. And, it's the summer. It's the dog days of summer. And so all the college football accounts are just putting out random stuff to spark conversations and get engagement on Twitter. And they posted a graphic. See it. Fox's college football on Fox Twitter account posted a graphic. And it was essentially just, what's the best wide receiver room of all time? And it was Ohio State and LSU. And very quickly, Marv quotes it. And this is before he had his Heisman Trophy finalist season in 2023. He just goes, Ohio State 2021 spring room. And I have had that in the back of my mind since he tweeted it out and been saving it. Because here's that room now. Here's the 2 deep of that room in the spring. And I'm glad you mentioned Jameson Williams because he is still here at that point. Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith-Njigba. That's the number 10 pick and then the number 11 pick in the 2022 NFL draft, and the number 20 pick, who was also wide receiver 1 in the 2023 NFL draft. Marvin Harrison Jr., Jameson Williams, and Emeka Egbuka. Marvin Harrison Jr. was wide receiver 1 and the number 4 overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft for the Cardinals. He was also the first non-quarterback taken in that draft. Jameson Williams goes 12 in the 2022 NFL draft. So Garrett, Chris, and J-Mo are wide receivers 2, 3, and 4 behind Drake London in Atlanta that year. And I bring that up because I wanted Garrett in Atlanta. And then now you've got Emeka Egbuka, who, depending on how you want to talk about Travis Hunter and what he is, Emeka is either wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 in this NFL draft class. But still, 6 guys, 1 room, all in the top 20 of their respective NFL draft classes. That's absurd for anybody to be able to do, to be able to say, when Marvin and Emeka got to Ohio State, they walked into a wide receiver room where there were already 4 other guys in it who were going to be first round wide receivers, and only one of them had to leave to achieve that goal.
Yeah, it's crazy to even think about, because this is kind of only the start, it feels like. Because if Carnell Tate or Brandon Ennis, and honestly, like, if I told you both of them were first round picks last year, I don't think it's shocking. I'm not predicting that to happen, but I don't think it would be shocking. And then we're talking about Jeremiah Smith in 2 years.
Yeah.
And then we're talking about guys like Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham and Chris Henry Jr. And like, the list goes on and on. This is not stopping anytime soon, as long as Brian Hartline is at Ohio State, and it doesn't sound like he wants to leave anytime soon. Like, this trend is going to continue most likely. And it's like, it's getting to the territory where maybe this is a record that never gets broken.
Yeah.
Like, if my research is right, and the 4 straight years with a receiver in the first round is indeed the first time this ever happened, and you start talking about getting to 5 and 6, I don't know how. Like, this is an unprecedented run.
I think next year gets tricky because there's not the guy who is the Emeka Egbuka Chris Olave description of maybe they could have been a first rounder after 3 years, but they came back to maybe solidify themselves as first rounders because of whatever the reason was. Chris wanted to come back another year and get physically strong and ready for the NFL. Emeka injuries kind of destroyed his 2023 season, along with, if you want to feel this way, quarterback play not being at the highest level it needed to be at in the games it needed to be at, whatever, however you feel about that. I guess we'll find that out in the next 2 days where Colin McCourt goes. And they don't really have a guy who fits the Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jackson Smith-Njigba description either, where, okay, these dudes are first rounders, they just have to be in college another year description. What you have really is Jamison Williams, when he got to Alabama, of kind of on the radar, but not really on the radar. And that's where Carnell Tate is, and that's where Brandon Ennis are, where I think because they're Ohio State receivers, we're saying this, that, okay, maybe one of them pops next year, but it's not always a guarantee that it's going to happen, right? Eventually things come to an end. So I do think next year, Carnell and Brandon are going to be an interesting case study for this. Because listen, 2026, nobody's worried about this. There's a 19-year-old on the roster right now 2027 draft, 2026 season. Nobody's worried about that. We're having number 1 overall pick conversations when it comes to JJ. So I think next year and we're going to have a pod about this next week, about just predicting Ohio State's first round draft picks from a year from now. But I do think next year is a interesting bridge gap year for Carnell and Brandon. And maybe Carnell more than Brandon because he's a little bit more established, but Brandon's going to play in the slot, which gets the ball a lot. So I think we've reached the point with this room, though, where it's safe to just assume it's going to happen and be wrong if it's not. So let's assume either Carnell and Brandon, or Brandon is, or both, turn into what we expect receivers to turn into when they hear their name day 1 next year. And then JJ is a year after that. Realistically, when you look at the guys who are coming into the room, you got JJ in 2027. Quincy Porter already looks like he's well on his way to developing into something. Chris Henry Jr., Mylan Graham. We'll see what happens with the rest of this 2026 recruiting class. You got Jameer Brown in the 2027 recruiting class. When is the next time Ohio State doesn't have a first-round draft pick at wide receiver?
I think we're talking beyond the years of committed players.
Mark it down. Okay, mark it down. How many years does this go? It's at 4 years right now. How many more years, if we had to mark it down right now? It is past midnight of the first night of the NFL draft. 4 years in. How many more years? Mark it down right now, Stefan.
So Jeremiah would be the 2027 draft.
Yes.
I'll say 2028 NFL draft is when Ohio State doesn't have someone. So that it would get to 6 years. I really do think Carnell Tate's going to end up being a first round pick next year.
I do too.
He's got the size, and honestly, like even if the workload and the numbers don't rise too much, NFL teams. I mean, you just had a defensive end taken by the Bengals who had like 4.5 sacks last year. Like, and that is what it is. But like, Cardinals going to have the size and things of that nature where even if the numbers don't pop off the charts, he's still going to get some attention. So I think it's going to be Cardinal next year, Jeremiah in 2027, and then 2028 gets interesting because if Brandon Inniss comes back next year, it might be hard again for someone to like break through on the roster and on the depth chart.
Yeah.
So maybe you kind of get caught in this weird in between where you're either like you're a junior who's not playing a ton and you want to come back for your senior year, or whatever the situation may be. It might just stack up weirdly in 2028, the way the receiver kind of depth chart maps out.
It's what would have happened this year, I think, if Emeka hadn't dealt with injuries, where
yeah, exactly.
if he doesn't deal with injuries and he's gone, well, why didn't Ohio State have a first-round draft pick this year? Well, because nobody was draft eligible. They were playing a lot of young guys, and it was kind of a reset of a thing. And I'll say 28 as well, just because I'm almost expecting that to happen at some point, where it's not because nobody was good enough. It's just more nobody was old enough to go pro.
Right.
And if nobody's old enough to go pro, then you can't. It's just going to end because of age, and that's how this kind of works here. Okay.
I will say, too, one more thing on Emeka. Yeah. We just got a comment here from PJ saying it's a great landing spot for him. I 100% agree. I love the idea of him slotting into what Tampa's been doing. I know they lost their offensive coordinator to Jacksonville, but like the way they work their receivers, and you think about the production that guys like Godwin and Mike Evans have had for how many years it's been now, and they got Bucky Irving in the backfield too. Like I think Baker's, at least been consistent enough for them. Like Emeka slotting into that offense and kind of being a young receiver in a receiver room that's quickly getting old. I love the fit. I 100% agree.
He just went from being the old guy preparing the young guys. Now he's about to be the young guy getting prepared by the old guys.
He's going to see Mike Evans and be like, hey, I was in your shoes last year.
Yeah. But when I was in your shoes, he won a ring. So I don't know, man. Are you going to get me a ring this year or what? Okay, I'm going to skip around a little bit because I just think, and it's going off of, we got somebody in our chat who's asked this question, and it's essentially what I was going to say anyway. Buckeye Ryan 19, is Donovan Jackson the biggest winner of the seniors that came back as far as improved draft stock? Yes. I think he is. And I'll take that a step further than that. I think Josh Simmons getting hurt, it ended up being a win for both because they're both first-round draft picks. But I do wonder if Josh Simmons doesn't get hurt, he's probably a top 20, probably top 15 draft pick, right?
ESPN was talking about like top 5, top 10 if Josh Simmons doesn't get hurt.
Especially once you see how the tackles came off the board, I think he moves up a little bit. I think Donovan Jackson goes in the 40s if he's just a guard, though I'm not even 100% sure about that because there are some guards coming off the board today. But I do wonder if, I mean, listen, his first ever game at tackle was against the number 5 pick in the NFL draft. And then he also had a game at tackle where he played against another first-round draft pick today that the Falcons took. And Abdul Carter had his moments, but again, that was his first game. We were saying it after the Tennessee game. Where's James Pierce? Nobody could find him. And that's a first-round draft pick that he did that to. I wonder if teams started looking at Donovan and going, he's not just a guard. And he's super athletic, and he's got crazy long arms, even if he doesn't have prototypical tackle size for whatever that means. He's short with long arms. Will Campbell is tall with short arms. And both of them are first-round draft picks on the offensive line. Yes, I think Donnie, for a guy who was, if you had to rank the most on the fence guys about coming back after 2023, he's got a strong case for being number 1. In fact, I think he was completely out the door at one point and changed his mind. And the day he changed his mind, ironically enough, Will Howard just so happened to also be on campus for a visit that day. But I think Donovan Jackson, boy, oh boy, the college football playoff, he made himself some money.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, Ryan Day talked about him after the championship game as the question posed today. It was the morning after the national championship game. Question posed to him was like, there's there's a lot of stories on this team. You could pick any player and find a storyline for why winning a national championship is a fitting either ending or continuation, whatever you want to call it. And he was essentially asked, like, what's an underrated one? And the first one he mentioned was Donovan Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
He said it was basically a foregone conclusion. He said it was a last-second decision for Donovan Jackson to come back. And he comes back, and, we talked about it when it happened, when Josh Simmons went down and Zen Mihalski went down, and we're trying to figure out what is this team going to do at tackle, where there's a lot of people in Donovan Jackson's shoes who would have said, hey, I'm a potential first-round pick at guard. I don't want to go out there, look bad, and ruin my stock. And it was actually quite the opposite. I think Donovan looked at it as an opportunity to improve his stock. I think Chip Kelly talked about it as an opportunity to improve his stock, and that's exactly what happened. If he is a starting tackle in the NFL, I would not be surprised. I would love to, and I'm sure there's press conferences going on either right now or there will be going on after the draft. I want to know what the Vikings say, because I would love to know where he slots in for them. And that's, man, you look at what the Vikings do, like that's a well-oiled machine when it comes to offense and what Kevin O'Connell's doing there and the way he's slotted in guys on the offensive line. And think about the success they've had with quarterbacks for the last 3 years. Like, we're talking about Kirk Cousins, and last year was Sam Darnold, and they were winning games with Josh Dobbs after Kirk Cousins got hurt. Like, a lot of that is scheming and doing different things with offense and having good protection. And you talk about having athletic linemen who can get down the field for you and block at the next level. That's what you want, and that's what Donovan Jackson brings. I remember one of my first days covering this team going into the 2024 season of Chip Kelly just praising Donovan Jackson and his athleticism and being like, those are the type of offensive linemen I love in my offense. And I could see why teams at the next level would love a Donovan Jackson. And let's see what the Vikings do with him, because I'm not going to say the options are limitless, because there's really 4 options, but in terms of offensive linemen, the options are limitless, because you could put him really wherever on the line outside of center, and he's going to be a productive player for you.
I mean, why not try it? Let's see. Let's get the fall camp. Let's see. That's
when McLaughlin went down, if Ohio State had bodies, maybe Donovan would have moved.
Yeah, I mean, that when we did our prediction spot, that was my whole thing, is just pick Donnie and figure it out in fall camp. And I think that's what the Vikings are going to do. They pick Donnie with the 24th pick in the NFL draft, and in August they'll bring him back in and go, all right, let's see where we can play you. And then they'll play the Detroit Lions and play Tyleik Williams. So I'm looking at Ohio State's 2021 recruiting class, and I think I'm going to choose to look at this through the positive lens, because there's a pessimistic view to look at what has happened with this defensive line class, and then there's a optimistic way that you can look at it. I'm going to do the optimistic way, because at some point they won a national championship. They just have 4 first-round draft picks. At some point, the pessimism is just you hating on them. You turn into Skip Bayless with LeBron James. JT Tuimoloau, number 4 overall player, number 2 defensive lineman. He's still waiting to be drafted. 5-star recruit. Jack Sawyer, number 5 overall player, number 3 defensive lineman, 5-star recruit. He's still waiting to be drafted. We both think that they're going to be day 2 guys, so they might not be waiting that much longer. Mike Hall, number 53 overall player, number 10 defensive lineman. He's a 3-and-done player who ends up being the 54th pick in the 2024 NFL draft. That's a second-round draft pick. And then now you have Tyleik Williams. He was a number 166 player in this class and the number 25 defensive lineman in this class. And he ends up being the 28th pick in the NFL draft. And now that it's happened, none of us are shocked that it's happened. But I don't know if 4 years ago, when this group signed, if you went, how many of these defensive linemen are going to be first-round draft picks? I do not know how many people would have added Tyleik Williams into that count. In fact, there was a point in this cycle where Tyleik Williams was Taminchie Adeleye, who has now been at multiple schools. He ended up flipping to Texas A&M, and then he spent some time at another school. I'm not remembering right now. And then he ended up at Michigan State, and now he's at another school right now. So he's just kind of gotten lost to the transfer portal there. But 4 guys, and the lowest of that group is a first-round draft pick. And right now, the second lowest of that group literally went 1 spot lower than what his recruiting ranking was. And we think Jack and JT are going to be second-round draft picks. So maybe this is not even that big of a deal here. But let's start with the optimistic part of this. You turn the 166 player in his recruiting class until the 28th pick in the NFL draft. Larry Johnson still got it.
Yep. That's a great way of looking at it. And another guy who benefited from that senior season, like someone pointed out, or PJ pointed out in her comments. The idea of what Tyleik can be in the NFL is also so intriguing because of the athleticism mixed with the size. Like when his name popped up during the draft, the people on ESPN were like, yes, like this guy is legit. And it's a great testament to Larry Johnson. And it seems like every time the portal opens and we talk recruiting and we talk high school recruiting, we talk portal recruiting, people are quick to point out Larry Johnson maybe not getting some wins. But when it comes to development, like he's still showing it. He's still doing it. And he actually just got a recruiting win the other day with the portal with Bo Atkinson from North Carolina.
Good week to be a Johnson, man.
That is true. No, but Tyleik is a huge win for this staff. And it gives you excitement for, as much as we talk about defensive tackle depth and needing to get guys in the portal, those high-end guys, Edric Houston and Caden McDonald, what they can become for this team, like first-round pick is not out of the picture. And some of those guys have had better recruiting profiles than even Tyleik Williams. But like when you see what Ohio State has done with Tyleik and what they've produced him into a first-round NFL pick, you start looking at those other guys, you're like, man, like they can do this. They're doing this at an impressive rate. And we had the podcast recently talk about, can Ohio State reclaim D-line U? That hasn't been the case, since Ryan Day has been the head coach, right? Like now is the time for it to start turning. Like Tyleik just got drafted. We're expecting Jack and JT and Ty Hamilton all get drafted. And then next year, are we talking about Kenyatta and Caden and down the line, Caden McDonald and Edric Houston and wherever this goes? Larry Johnson still got it. He's still doing it.
I mean, it's him and Chase Young. That's your first round defensive lineman. Okay, fine. Maybe this is not a pessimistic view because they're going to be second round and third round draft picks. I don't think either one of us are sitting here expecting JT and Jack to still be on the board on Saturday. But I don't know, 2 5-star recruits who, I mean, you mentioned Jamar Stewart a second ago, who had 4.5 sacks in his career. I mean, Jack and JT had more than that individually in just 4 games in a college football playoff. They're not first-round draft picks, though. Does that matter? Because I do want to have a pot on that eventually, this idea of who is doing the best job of turning guys who come into college as 5-star recruits, so they're expected to be first-round draft picks, and turning them into that exactly. Because with Tyleik Williams, he outplayed his recruiting ranking. It's not always a miss. I hate that they're talking about Cam Ward, which I do have a question I want to pose to you at the end of this. It's not always a miss. Sometimes it's just guys didn't get evaluated. There are millions of high school kids playing high school football, but 2 of the top 5 players in the country, neither one of them is going to be a first-round draft pick. Do we care? And you add in Zach Harrison, who was also a 5-star recruit on the defensive line, who also was not a first-round draft pick. He was a day 2 draft pick in his recruiting class. He went 75th to the Falcons in the 3rd round in 2023. Do we put any credence to that when we're living in a world where, on the other flip end of that, Emeka Egbuka, Jackson Smith-Njigba, they're both 5-star recruits and they're first-round draft picks. JJ's a 5-star recruit. He's going to be a first-round draft pick.
Yeah, maybe there's a little bit stock to be put in that. I don't want to say too much definitively without having done a little more research on that. Sure. And we'll dig up the numbers and do a pod on that later, I guess. But yes and no. I would love to know the numbers of just like, sure, this 5-star didn't develop into a first-round pick, but like the 2nd-round pick. And like, is that bad? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad? I don't know, because I want to see how many 5-stars flame out and aren't draft picks at all, or day 3 draft picks. Like, I don't know. It's on the surface level, you would probably say it's not a great thing, right? Like, you get a guy that's a top 5 player in his class, you'd expect him to be one of the first 32 players taken in his draft. So yeah, on surface level, I agree with you, but I'd be curious to know what the numbers show.
There also weren't a lot of true defensive ends who went in the first round. There were a lot of edge, which is where football is moving, these hybrid outside linebackers who are like linebackers/defensive ends. But true defensive ends, Michael Williams, I think, might have been the only one. So that's part of this. If it's more, maybe James Pierce is more of like a traditional what you think about a defensive end, like setting the edge guy. But it seems like that player, that Micah Parsons makeup, maybe is more of the first round draft pick now than what JT and Jack are in terms of they were prototype defensive end first round draft picks in 2019 when you've got Chase Young and Nick Bolt. But now maybe that's not the case in a world where more teams are running 3.35s and 3.4s.
Yeah. And I think that's part of why we're seeing JT kind of consensus being projected ahead of Jack, because I think JT has a little more of that in him, of that like edge, whatever you want to call it. I think he has a little bit more of that in him, but that could be part of the reason too. And I think we've had plenty of discussions of Ohio State kind of using the traditional 4-man front, and we could go on forever about what that was like in the Jim Knowles defense.
3-4. No, I'm joking.
But maybe there. It's like this is where CJ Hicks kind of enters this conversation where, like, if it clicks for him, like, you know, that's first round potential because that's what teams want.
I don't know, man. I think CJ Hicks was looking at Jalen Walker tonight and going, well, I can do that. I think because Jalen Walker is not like a big dude. He's 6'1". He's 6'1", 6'2", 240. CJ Hicks is what, 6'3", 235, something like that. They're the same age too. Jalen Walker was just a 3-and-done player, and CJ Hicks is not, because Jalen Walker went to Georgia, who runs a 3-4, so he got to do off-ball and on-the-ball linebacker stuff, while CJ was trying to learn how to be an on-ball linebacker for the last 3 years. And I'm just wondering if CJ looked at Jalen Walker, if we could get truth serum to CJ Hicks tonight and get him on a microphone, would he go, yeah, I can be Jalen Walker?
I mean, I don't even know if you have to give him truth serum. If you just run into him and ask him,
you just got to find him. Just find CJ and pull him on the microphone.
You should have
Jalen Walker, pretty good, huh?
Just send him the link. We did get a comment from Tyler here saying, confused how Shamar went before Sawyer and JT. Yeah. I mean, I agree. Like you said, Stephen, part of it is what the NFL is kind of looking for in these edge rushers. Like, maybe part of the conversation of why Jack and JT didn't develop into first round picks is as simple as, like, I don't know, they should have been. JT maybe should have been.
Shamar Stewart's the weirdest pick of the night. It's crazy. The
Falcons made a pretty weird pick. I think their pick was weird of how aggressive they were going for it.
Okay. Listen. Here's why it's weird. Here's the problem. We live in the Ohio State bubble. And because we live in the Ohio State bubble, we view everything through the Ohio State lens.
I texted you this.
I know.
I said you have to. I was like, you have to unsee everything from what Donovan Jackson and Josh Fryer did to him.
And let me tell you why. As you were sending me that text, I was sending another text. The text of, I cannot believe we just took this kid. I just watched the guard pretending to be a tackle shut him down for 60 minutes. That was how I phrased it. And then, but at the same time, I go, oh, Donovan Jackson is amazing. He can play everywhere, because that's the Ohio State bubble.
Yes.
With that being said, this is me being a fan for a second. I think James Pierce is still a very, 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 very good defensive end. I also have seen and heard from people he doesn't always put the best effort forward. And that really shows up when you're going up against a dude who's the same caliber as you. And I think that's what happened in Ohio Stadium on December 21st. Donovan Jackson is like him. They look each other in the eye. One's the 24th pick in the draft. The other one's the 26th pick in the draft. That is the most I look you in the eye from a talent standpoint as it can humanly get for a football player. And Donovan Jackson showed up on December 21st, ready to show why he was the 24th pick in the NFL draft. And I don't think James Pierce showed up there ready to show why he was the number 26 player in the NFL draft. That's me defending my team.
No, listen, dude, I went to war in group chats as a Bears fan talking about Colston Loveland being better than Tyler Warren, which I do genuinely think that might be true. But also, like, in our jobs, we kind of watch football a bit more than, like, the people who are texting me. So it's like, hey, Tyler Warren threw a pass. Why would you not take it? I'm like, well, they have Caleb Williams. They're not really looking for Tyler Warren to throw passes. No. But sometimes, listen, draft day is like, it's like we got 5 more months of just going to war in these group chats, and that's all right. That's okay.
Draft night is hard for sports journalists who cover college football.
Yes.
Because you're trying to do your job while also be a human being.
Yeah.
Tyler in our chat just said it perfectly. Everyone's a first round draft pick at OSU. Yes.
Yeah.
When you live in the bubble, all 32 picks deserve to be Buckeyes, even though they're only starting 22 people. Which brings us to the ultimate OSU bubble conversation with Josh Simmons going 32nd to the Chiefs. And I sent these. Andrew, Stefan, and I have been talking all night about a bunch of different stuff because we actually like each other in our real lives. And I said this to them. In fact, I'll read the text. I'll let them in on it. I got to find it first because I've been yelling at people all night.
Give them your personal phone number. Get those texts.
No. I have a graphic that's been going down below us the entire time. I promise you not. I almost put my own phone number in here. I'm starting to think, and this is after a text where I said shut up because they were making fun of me because of the Falcons picks. I'm starting to think Simmons isn't completely healthy, and now teams are scared off. I do wonder, though, it probably is some of that because Will Johnson fell out the first round as well. And I think a year ago you just said, oh, yeah, he's a lock to be a first-round draft pick. What do we think of Josh Simmons at 32? And I'm going to ask you two different questions, and so your answer is going to be long. There's the shocked, not surprised of where he went, too high, too low, but also, I mean, this is kind of Justin Fry's last gift to Ohio State is his first year as the offensive line coach in 2022. He got Parrish ready to go be a first-round draft pick, and then his last year as Ohio State's offensive line coach, he turned Josh Simmons in 6 games into a first-round draft pick. So essentially, you can say whatever you want about the recruiting, which I think was horrid and not good enough, but Justin Fry had 2 first-round draft picks tonight, and one of which he took from San Diego State and turned into a first-round draft pick.
Yeah, I'll start with the latter, talking about Justin Fry. I think my takeaway from Josh Simmons being a first-round pick and my takeaway from what happened in 2024 with Ohio State's offensive line is that Justin Fry knew how to develop. And Justin Fry, the top-end talent on his offensive lines was pretty good to the point where, like, I don't mean top-end just in terms of, like, the 5 starters, but, like, number 6, number 7, like, those guys could slot in and be starters for you. I think we saw that with Luke Montgomery and Austin Sierreveld, Tucker Shabola, Carson Hinsman. Like, they had depth in the sense of guys who could start. Where he hurt them in the recruiting was not only was he not landing the best players, he wasn't landing enough players. Yeah. And Ohio State's still kind of reeling from that. Like, they're still trying to they have like 4 reliable offensive tackles and they're trying to get more in the portal right now because they just need bodies to practice, to get through fall camp and things of that nature. So it's like he did a fine job, even when he wasn't recruiting the best players, of developing players into high-end talent. But he didn't do a good enough job of just kind of recruiting numbers as a whole. And I think that hurt them over the course of X amount of years. And I think you're seeing the results of some of that right now. I mean, listen, they have Ethan Owens-Yawa and Philip Daniels. They had to go get those guys. Because what if they didn't go into the portal to get offensive tackles? Where were they going to be this year? And you take the portal into account to some extent because it's part of the game now. But you don't want to have to rely on it every year. And they kind of put themselves in a spot where they had to rely on it this year. So there's a domino effect to the recruiting side, but I think we saw that the top-end talent, it could be there, right? Like, if there's 2 first-round picks from this line, and if Seth McLaughlin doesn't hurt, who knows how high he gets drafted. Yeah. I don't think he was going to go very high after that last year at Alabama, but maybe he would have been a decent pick if he stayed healthy, right? Like, we'll see what happens with Luke Montgomery and guys like that. Like, we'll credit Tyler Bowen and Ryan Day, what happens there, but Justin Fry was a key part of their early development. So we'll see, I guess, what the story tells, but I think the high-end talent was pretty decent for a guy that maybe didn't land all the best recruits. What I will say about the Josh Simmons case specifically, I do think the injury played a role. We heard so much about – so he got hurt in October. He was probably going to be ready for fall camp or for training camp and for the season and things of that nature. Booger McFarland said on the ESPN broadcast that he'd either had the same injury or knew someone who had the same injury. It's like – you don't feel like yourself for a good year, maybe a little bit more. So Josh Simmons could get out there week 1. He could play. He's not going to be 100% looking like a first-round left tackle probably until like a month and a half into the NFL season. And maybe that caused some slides, right? Maybe, you're looking at guys like Will Campbell, who went 4th overall. Like, that's a guy who's probably going to start for the Patriots day one and protect Drake May's blind side. Well, if Josh Simmons is completely healthy, maybe he goes that high, right? And you're ready to slot him in to start. But like, you can't put a guy at left tackle in week 1 to protect a young quarterback if he's not going to be really ready until, a month and a half into the season. And then also, by the way, he still has to adjust to getting to the new level, which is a difficulty in itself. So I do think the injury played a bit of a role, but I mean, he dropped from what? We project him to go like realistically around 20, even with the injury. He fell to like 32 to the Chiefs. So I think he's still in a good spot. I think he's going to play for the Chiefs this year. Maybe it's not a starter week 1, but we just saw the help that they need at offensive line. I think they saw a tackle who they said, hey, when this guy's healthy, he's top 10 pick caliber. We can, kind of slowly bring him into the mix. And by the time you get to November and the NFL season really ramps up, he's going to be ready to go.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a question, and our listeners, whether those who are listening live, thank you guys for listening live. I know it's late. We're asking you to sit on YouTube and watch our floating heads at 12:30 at night. That's not an easy thing to pull off. So,
and I admittedly, allergies are starting to affect, so they're having to listen to my voice too, which isn't great. I love the beautiful weather in Columbus this week. I keep going outside, like going on walks and runs because I'm like, it's so beautiful. And then I come back inside and I'm like, man, I feel miserable right now.
Claritin, if you're looking for sponsors, send them our way.
Claritin right now, Celsius in October will be good.
Yeah, that'll get us to the year. So Cam Ward went number 1. Nobody was shocked by that. He was also the only quarterback taken. No, he was the second, but he's the first of 2 quarterbacks taken, which created a whole nother world of shocker that Jackson Dart was QB2 and not Shedeur Sanders. I don't know, man. I just felt like Shedeur is perfectly made for New York, and New York kind of dropped the ball on that one.
I'll say one more thing on Jackson Dart too. Like, did he benefit from Ole Miss not making the playoff? Because if that's what the Senior Bowl did for him, like Will Howard should have gone to the Senior Bowl.
Like, so Will Howard was too busy winning a national championship, so he couldn't go up his draft stock at the Senior Bowl. Yeah, that's.
I love them. I'm happy that Mel Kiper called it out because he was just like, "Did you guys watch the end of the Florida game? Like, they needed a drive. Like, they had like 4 opportunities to like just put a drive together and put this bad Florida team away, and they just like." He just kept throwing interceptions. Like, he couldn't stop throwing interceptions.
Listen, man, Quinshon Judkins said, I can't take this anymore. Okay? That's all I need to know. So Cam Ward goes number 1. I think everybody kind of knew that for a couple of weeks coming into this draft. And if not, Adam Schefter was going to tell you 5 seconds before they were going to make the pick anyway. So I posed a question simply for the sake of posing a question to our texters, 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. This idea of, so there was a rumblings of, hey, Cam Ward might be Ohio State starting quarterback in 2025. It was very known that Ohio State was in the market looking for a transfer quarterback. I'm sure they did their evaluations on everybody, which meant Cam Ward, it meant Will Howard, it meant Dylan Gabriel, on down the list there. And now after the NFL draft, the first round is completed, Cam Ward now fits the same criteria as the description that we have had for Ohio State quarterbacks in the Ryan Day era. Heisman Trophy finalist, first round NFL draft pick. That's what Dwayne Haskins was. That's what Justin Fields was. That's what CJ Stroud was. None of them won a national championship. CJ never even beat Michigan. Will Howard, from an individual standpoint, accolades and talent standpoint, officially does not meet that criteria. Heisman Trophy finalist, first round draft pick. But he's also the one with the national championship, which is the craziest part about it. He is from a, like, between him and Kyle McCord, and it's maybe Will is the worst just because Kyle McCord was still a 5-star quarterback, okay? Will Howard has the least descriptions next to his name that match what we talk about when we talk about Ohio State starting quarterbacks in the Ryan Day era. So because of that, I propose the hypothetical of, do we think Cam Ward the number one pick in the NFL draft, Heisman Trophy finalist, someone Ohio State at least evaluated enough to get a yes or no on whether or not they would explore that. Now, were there some NIL reasons for why Cam Ward ultimately chose Miami? Sure. Are there football reasons for why, even in a world where NIL doesn't exist, Ryan Day probably still wouldn't have gone down that road? Sure. And we all watched them play out this year. But put Cam Ward, the number one pick, Heisman Trophy finalist, in this system with Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Emeka Egbuka, first round draft pick at wide receiver, Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith, G. Scott, on down the list here, and Ryan Day and Chip Kelly as his quarterback guys, and Billy Fessler. Does Ohio State still win a national championship in 2024?
I think they still do because of how talented they were. Like, it just got to a point in the playoff where it was like, man, like nobody's stopping this team. And I did see some of our texters raise the point of, you didn't need Cam kind of trying to do too much, trying to play me ball, like things of that nature.
I got a couple of.
Go ahead, read a couple, yeah.
The 740, no, he was not a protector of the football. He is dynamic and steered comebacks, but the comebacks were caused by his bad mistakes. From Scott in Charleston, South Carolina, no, the locker room dynamic was lightning in a bottle. Ward may eventually have been a better NFL quarterback, but Will Howard connected with the team in a very unique way. Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, Notre Dame. That's a gauntlet that Howard navigated with his team through sheer passion. There's no revisionist history that could say Howard was replaceable in that setting. From the 708, my assumption, yes. The only question I have, which we will never know, is the intangible leadership and ability to foster/embrace a culture of winning. All of the physical tools are there. The other pieces we will never know. There were also people in our text who were like, yes, Steven, he's better. Of course they would have. In fact, they wouldn't have lost to Michigan. In fact, they wouldn't have gone undefeated. There's people all over the line there in our text group, 614-350-3315. I don't know. So maybe I'm going to let you answer this question first, and I'll decide from that.
So, first of all, shout out to, I think you said it was Scott from Charleston, South Carolina. I'll be in Charleston next week for a wedding. So, beautiful. Oh, no, sorry. I'll be in Columbia. But I was in Charleston for the bachelor party for the wedding that's going to be in Columbia. Charleston. I love Charleston, South Carolina. Great place. I think they still would have. I understand the concerns of there was a lot of comebacks and wins that Miami had that were because of mistakes that Cam Ward made earlier. That the version of Cam Ward we saw was a player at Miami being led by Miami's coaches and trained by Miami's coaches. Give me Cam Ward and give me 9 months of him working with Ryan Day and Chip Kelly. You're probably going to see a bit more polished, a bit more safer version of him than what you saw. You're also putting better weapons around him, better situation. Like, it wouldn't have been the same player. I think he would have been a slightly better player had he come to Ohio State as well. Like, I think Ohio State would have benefited. I think he would have benefited if he was with Ryan Day instead of at Miami. There is the leadership element that we can't ignore. I think a lot of times we're like, this guy was a leader. He fit the culture so well. And you kind of roll your eyes and you're just like, this, every coach talks about that quarterback like that. But I think it was true with Will Howard because we see it rolling into the 2025 quarterback competition. They can't stop talking about leadership and the qualities and the traits. The Will Howard, he got into the huddle and he looked the guys in the eyes and you knew that you were going to be okay. Like, that has stuck with Ohio State's coaches, which tells me that Will Howard did it in a way that they haven't seen very often for guys that have been around football for a while. A guy like Ryan Day has been around great quarterback play for a while. And there is that intangible element of it that existed. And the comment about, well, they would beat Michigan if they had Cam Ward. Well, listen, if they're calling the game the same way, they probably still lose to Michigan. Like, Cam Ward wasn't on the headset. And I don't think they were calling the game the way they did because Will Howard couldn't throw the ball. He had a great season throwing the ball. Like, the play calling was the play calling. That's why they lost to Michigan. And I don't know if Cam Ward bounces them back from the Michigan loss, if that's the case. Like, there was an element of leadership on that team. And it wasn't just Will Howard, right? Like, they had Jack and JT and Travion and other guys who stepped up. but the quarterback plays a big part in that. And I think the way Will Howard responded for the Michigan loss mattered to this team. And I don't know if Cam Ward would have. So I could go back and forth forever. I think my answer ultimately is that, yeah, they probably would have won a national title because I think this team was just that talented and things worked out. And I think Cam Ward would have been a great quarterback on this team and probably would have been top 10, top 5, maybe still the number 1 pick. But I could see the arguments from both sides. And I could definitely see the argument of I think we even had a comment here from Buckeye Ryan saying they needed Will Howard's attitude and leadership more than Ward's talent. Like, I don't think that's a bad argument.
I think the Michigan game is the only game where it would have mattered. And Night City Vibes just said that as well. As he's saying it as I'm, wow. But at the same time, if they're going to call the game that way, where it's like, hey, you know what our game plan is? Let's run at the number 5 and number 13 picks in the NFL draft and let's see what happens. Then it doesn't matter. Did you know Cam Ward was the highest graded quarterback in college football last year?
In PFF?
Yeah.
I did not. It doesn't surprise me, I guess, but
really? That
it wasn't
me.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who it could have been. Where's Dylan Gabriel on that list?
Gabriel is 14th, 86.6. He's
give me the top 5.
So the top 5 is Miami's Cam Ward, 92.9.
Is it Kyle McCord?
Nah.
Oh god.
Jackson Dart at 92.5. Shador Sanders at 90.9. Kyle McCord at 90.5, and Brandon Lewis from Nevada at 90.3. Will Howard is tied for 15th with Arkansas's Taylor Green at 86.4, and Dylan Gabriel's 14th at 86.6. The highest Big Ten quarterback is Curtis Rourke at 88.4. And he was up there with Dart and Shador and all those guys until the Ohio State game happened. I am very much shocked by that. Because here's the deal. Miami played a lot of Friday night games this year, it felt like. And so we were constantly watching them on Friday, which is where the whole Miami boys thing was even born.
Miami and Syracuse, appointment television on Friday nights.
It was. And I'm watching Cam Ward one day, and I'm like, Ryan Day would have had a heart attack coaching Cam Ward. And then you look at their numbers. So Cam Ward had 39 touchdowns and 7 interceptions in 13 games. Will Howard played more games. He had 35 touchdowns and 10 interceptions in 16 games. He also threw 2 picks in the college football playoff. So take out the playoff run, he only has 8 interceptions in 12 games. Well, Cam Ward had 31 big-time throws this past season. Will Howard had 22. Cam Ward had 18 turnover-worthy plays. Will Howard had 15 turnover-worthy plays, which, again, we all watched Cam Ward this year, right? Numbers don't lie. They also don't always tell the whole story. I live by that statement. Numbers should back up what you watched, not the other way around. I feel like if you looked at Cam Ward through the eyes of PFF, you are in for a rude awakening when you turn on a Miami football game from 2024. It was every other play felt like it should have been a turnover, whether it was or not. It was very boom bust with Cam Ward. And I know for a fact, because of the way Ryan Day coaches these quarterbacks and his philosophy on quarterback and how he make the routine plays routinely, every single day he would have had to go home and have a cigarette and a couple beers after coaching Cam Ward every single day.
Yeah, I will say, also PJ commented again, Will was hurt during the Michigan game.
He might not have been in the building.
So I think I was listening to part of my take this week, and it was either Todd McShay or Daniel Jeremiah was talking about Will Howard, and they were like, yeah, I mean, he was concussed in the Michigan game. I'm like, these guys were definitely watching film, talking to people, probably talking to agents, probably talking to Will Howard, being like, so what happened against Michigan? And that's when the truth finally came out of I'm not going to tell the media because that's an excuse. But by the way, if you're looking to draft me, I don't know where I was during that game.
Yeah, he's like, what? He's probably like, what Michigan game? I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't think they win the Penn State game if Cam Ward's their quarterback. Because think about the mistakes that Will Howard made in that game. 2 crucial mistakes where it probably should have been 28-3 at halftime. And they end up winning that game 20-13, in spite of their quarterback having his most erratic day. I'm doubling that turnover situation for Cam Ward based off what I watched on some Friday nights. He threw 2 interceptions against Michigan. I might add another one for Cam Ward because Will's interceptions were just like bad decisions. Cam Ward, a lot of his bad decisions were him trying to do something and make a play when it wasn't there. And Ohio State doesn't need its quarterbacks trying to make a play when the play's not there because they don't have to. And some of that is Cam Ward's in a situation where maybe he has to. He doesn't have Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, and Cardinal Tate as his wide receivers. But the biggest thing overall, I agree with all of you. Will Howard is deciding the quarterback battle in 2025. And it has nothing to do with his football ability. It has everything to do with what he was to that locker room. Quinshon Judkins went on ESPN this week because, everybody's making their rounds and being media darlings all of a sudden because they're all trying to get jobs.
Well, he also, Old Spice played a part in that.
Yeah, he definitely had an Old Spice background. I mean, listen, Old Spice, if you want to give us a background, we're not going to say no. I don't know for sure if Cam Ward would have pulled them out of that hole after the Michigan loss. Because that was the one thing that I always respected about Will was when it came to that Michigan game, he understood that he has no idea what these other players have been dealing with. He just got here. He doesn't know what Jack and JT and Trey and Emeka and Donnie and Tyleik and Ty Hamilton and Denzel Burke and Lathan Ransom and even Davison Igbinosun and Jordan. He has Cody Simon. He has no idea. He's trying to ingrain himself into something that they have been living and taking the heat for 3 years. And he's tasked with being the reason they no longer have to deal with it anymore. Now they lost it, so now he knows what they feel like. But he still doesn't know completely because that's 1 loss, so they're 4. I don't know for sure if Cam Ward would have pulled them out of there. I don't know if any other quarterback could have pulled them out of that. 4 straight?
Yeah, probably not.
Your coach's address is being leaked on the internet? You're having players-only meetings with Ryan Day that got way more heated than that's, it's probably not good for FTC race what was said in that meeting. I mean, they're also athletes. It happens. But maybe Will was the perfect guy for that. Does that mean, okay, that all of a sudden you don't have the guy who fits the description of what an Ohio State quarterback is supposed to be under Ryan Day, which is Heisman Trophy finalist, first-round draft pick, highly rated recruit? Because that's what all those other guys were. They fit at least one of those, and for 3 of them, they fit all of them. Maybe that's not what was needed in 2024. Maybe you didn't need the ultimate talented guy who was going to be in conversations of, is he going to be the first quarterback taken off the board or the third one? Maybe you didn't need that. Maybe you needed the day 2, maybe even day 3 pick who was an old grown man who could just steady the ship at the moment when this program probably needed it most. So I don't think Will's better than Cam Ward, but I think he was a better fit for what 2024 Ohio State football needed. And that's what matters most. And that's why they ended up winning the ring.
Yeah, I was trying to see the numbers that, Ohio State so badly wanted a kind of a dual threat quarterback. Their rushing stats are pretty similar.
They're the same dude. So why would CFF love one of them and not love the other one?
I don't think I'm so surprised by Cam Ward being number 1 as I am Will Howard being 15 with Arkansas's quarterback. Whatever, do your thing, I guess. We always say take those things with a grain of salt. I guess some salt is more bitter than others, but
that's a bar.
I agree with you though. I agree with you though in the sense of it was hard to dig that team out of that hole, and maybe we're selling Will short by saying you put in this talented quarterback, they would have been doing the same thing. Maybe we're not giving him enough credit there, and I think probably at the point where people should start giving Will Howard more credit because he went all year getting no credit, and then he won a national championship. People still didn't give him credit. So I think I'm with you. I went back and forth, and I could talk myself into this team winning it with Cam because he is so good. And, you know, every situation is different. Being asked to be a leader on that Miami team is being different than, you know, growing leadership skills for this Ohio State team. But Will did it in a way that seems almost impossible to replicate. So let's not sell him short by saying someone else could have done it, I guess.
It's because I was with you guys. I was with some of our texters who were like, yeah, of course they would have. He's the number one pick in the NFL job. But it's almost video gaming, real life sports. And sometimes we can all do that. It's like if you just plug this guy in and throw him out there, anything can happen. And that's not how sports actually work.
Yep.
Right. In a video game, yeah, of course, you can just replace Will Howard with the dude who's a 90 overall on the game, and you're going to be awesome. But real sports don't work that way because they're still human beings and there's aspects and there's things you can't always predict that can go wrong, right? Guys can have injuries and how they respond to those injuries can be weird. How they respond to you just threw a pick six on your first pass at Penn State, which is your home school, and you always want to play there. How does he respond to that? How do you respond to you thought you got down with time on the clock, but you really didn't get down with time on the clock, and so you lost the Oregon? How do you respond to your kicker has a messed up hip, but also it's the Michigan game, so it's psychologically in his head, so he misses 2 field goals. All of that stuff is just not always taken into account when we just go, how about we replace this guy with that guy, and let's see what happens here. So, yeah, I don't think they would have won a national championship.
Will Howard did something that no quarterback in college football history has done before.
Right. And
dig his team out of 2 very bad holes and win a national championship.
Right. I don't think Cam Ward would have won a national championship as Ohio State's head coach. I mean, starting quarterback. He definitely wouldn't have done that as head coach. He's 22 years old. I think the story would have ended the same way it did for the last 3 guys who fit his description. Good season, didn't get over the hump, fans feeling like something was left on the table, and then on draft day we're going, oh man, yay, he's a first-round draft pick, which means we just wasted another first-round draft pick. And that's been the story for 5 years.
I guarantee you all our texters, listeners, and those watching live on YouTube are just fine if Ohio State turns out day 3 quarterbacks as long as they win national championships.
But also, they're getting right back to the day 1 quarterbacks. They have a 5-star starting this year, so it's fine.
It's true.
Yeah, Ohio State just went and got an old man for a year so they could get over the hump, and it worked. Kudos to you, Ryan Day, and kudos to you, Ohio State. You got 4 first-round draft picks, 4 of 17 guys you hope to see get drafted this year. Good pace if they want to break the record, or at least tie the record that Georgia set in 2022 with 15. 4 down, 13 more to go. Get the text 614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. That's round 1 of the NFL draft. Ohio State 4 guys off the board. Emeka Egbuka goes to the Buccaneers. Donovan Jackson goes to the Vikings. Tyleik Williams goes to the Lions. Josh Simmons goes to the Chiefs. That's 19, 24, 28, and 32. Brian Hartline on an historic run. Donovan Jackson joins Paris Johnson as first-round draft picks on the offensive line in the Ryan Day era, as does Josh Simmons. And Tyleik Williams joins Chase Young as first-round draft picks on the defensive line for Ryan Day as Ohio State's head coach. We will not talk again until Monday when we wrap up the entire draft, and then that's it. We start to look forward to 2025 and beyond. For Stefan Krajisnik, I am Stephen Means. Thank you to everybody who watched live at 12:30 in the morning. You guys are awesome people. You're the reason we have jobs. I'm Stephen Means, and that was Buckeye Talk.